Tonight in New York City, the nation's oldest civil rights group, the NAACP, will hear from the country's first African-American president. Earlier this week, they also heard from the first African-American head of the Republican Party, Michael Steele. Steele is the chairman, of course, of the Republican National Committee, and he's in our Washington bureau this morning. Chairman Steele, it's good to see you this morning. What does it say about America as a nation that you have the first African-American president addressing the NAACP tonight, just a few days after you did?
Well, I think it's a big wow. I mean, obviously it's historic and it's important when you're talking about the general progress of the nation and particularly African Americans over the last 400 years of our history here, that we've come to this point, that at this point in time in history, two African American men sit atop the political world here in the country. And I think that's important. But it also, I think, speaks to another subplot, if you will, the fact that within the community there's differences of opinion, there's a wide array of views on a number of issues, and I think that's reflected in both the president and myself in terms of how we look at health care and bailouts and the economy, and particularly the progress of African Americans, which is what I wanted to talk about while I was there. Right.
Now when you went to the convention and you addressed it, you urged members of the NAACP to see the GOP as an ally, but history wouldn't suggest that the NAACP exactly sees the Republican Party as a valued ally. President Bush ignored the convention for the first 5 years of his presidency. The Republican Party hasn't got more than 12% of the African American vote since 1996. In fact, Bob Dole was the high watermark back then at 12%. John McCain got 4%. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So what's the problem here?
Well, you're talking recent history, but can't forget the fact, as I pointed out to the delegates at the convention, that there's a historic and inextricable link between the GOP and African Americans. In fact, Republicans helped found the NAACP back in 1909. And so that, that period that you're talking about now is one where I guess you can say the wheels have come off, and basically and largely because the GOP executed certain strategies for political gain or whatever that just fell flat. And you cannot take for granted nor ignore, particularly in these times, political constituencies. So my goal was to go back and reach and say, look, let's start to talk about and work on those things together that matter to you.
So what do you do to put the wheels back on?
Well, you do what I did. You show up and you go in there and you say, look, I understand the history here very well. I understand the frustration and the anger that you have. Let's talk about health care. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about those things that can begin to bring about real change, substantive change in the community. If you think my problem was walking in the door, President Obama has one as well, because there is an anxiety about what direction are you leading us and how will it benefit the black community, particularly when you have unemployment soaring under his policies right now, and other issues that have not been addressed, the AIDS infection rate, the recidivism rate, and so forth. So there's some dynamics here that the president's going to have to deal with as well, and it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say.
Well, let's talk about the president for just a second here, because African Americans had extraordinarily high expectations in the wake of his election. CNN Opinion Research Corporation poll asked the same question a couple of different times. Obama's election, is it the start of a new era in race relations? Back in December, 51% of African Americans said yes. May of this year, only 44% said yes. Is the president failing to live up to expectations, or is that just a natural process of it's different the day after the election compared to where you are 6 months into the presidency?
I think there's a combination of both, but I think there have been two glaring examples where African Americans have come to pause, and both occurred at press conferences where the president has been asked directly, how will your policies benefit the black community specifically? And he's talked about it in more generic terms. If I help this group, I help our community. That's not what black folks want to hear right now. And I think when you're looking at a number of issues that are really plaguing the community, particularly with respect to employment, the dropout rate in education, the fact that the administration is cutting funding for HBCUs, cut scholarship programs here in the District of Columbia, African Americans have a real concern that, maybe this is same old, same old.
Hey, there's one other question I need to ask you about, Chairman Steele. This is Audra Shay. She's the new chairman of the Young Republicans. There was some controversy over responses on her Facebook page, in which she appeared to endorse racist attitudes. She has denied all of that, of course, saying that she wasn't responding directly to that particular comment on her Facebook page. She was responding to an earlier one, but there are other musings that had been reported on in which she seems to use harsh language. Is she really the person who you're comfortable with bringing young people into the Republican Party?
Well, it's not a question of whether I'm comfortable with it or not. I think I have not talked to Audra yet, but I did hear and read about her apology and her explanation. You know, it goes to the fact that, you know, we say and do stupid things sometimes, and we don't think about the consequences, particularly when we're in positions of leadership, of how that translates to other people. And I think it's just one more example of how the party as a whole and generally needs to be better suited in listening to the drumbeat out there and paying attention to how people are perceiving what you're saying. You know, I don't think it's a reflection, number one, of the party. I think it's maybe a reflection of, you know, just a crazy comment or two. I don't take this as, you know, while some imprimatur by the party in terms of our relations with African Americans. But I think what it does mean, though, is that people have got to be better prepared and smarter about how they speak on these issues.
But if you say and do stupid things, should you be in a position like that?
Well, there are enough people in Washington that are saying and doing stupid things right now that I think
one more doesn't matter.
You know, I mean, you know, your point could apply to a number of members of Congress right now who just voted to nationalize our healthcare system. So I think that that applies across the board.
Chairman Steele, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thanks so much.
All righty, take care.